Welcome to WealthRise Stories, where clarity meets knowledge, and knowledge becomes financial power.
Have you ever stopped and asked yourself how many ads we actually see in a single day? I'm not talking about the random banners you scroll past on Facebook or the skip ad on YouTube that you're desperately trying to avoid. I'm talking about everything. From the moment you open your eyes and see the logo on your coffee mug, to the second you lie down in bed, and even in your dreams. If you ever dream of a product you just saw, congratulations, the ad's already won. Some study once claimed that the number could go up to 5,000, 10,000, even 20,000 advertising messages a day. Sounds insane, right? A number that makes you frown and think, do I actually notice all of that? The truth is, most of the time we don't. We've grown so used to their presence that they feel like a natural part of the air we breathe, the water we drink, everything around us. We live in an advertising matrix, yet we rarely realize we're in it. And what's even more interesting is that this isn't some brand new phenomenon of the digital age. Not at all. Think about it, from old folk tales to street vendors shouting their pitches at the dawn of civilization, to someone hanging up a wooden sign with a drawing of a fish to signal fresh fish sold here, or scribbling on stone slabs on the ancient walls of Pompeii to announce a gladiator show. All the way to the echoing street cries in bustling ancient Egyptian markets, inviting people to buy fragrant oils, fabrics, or exquisite jewelry. Those were the earliest ads, full of humanity, directness, and life. Fast forward to the modern world. What do we have? Sophisticated algorithms on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, X, Twitter, where every short video, every story might hide a sponsored message or a call to action. The neon billboards blazing over Times Square, giant posters covering entire buildings, and even those spam calls from sales call centers. Advertising has evolved and transformed endlessly, but its essence remains the same: capture attention, create desire, and drive action. But why are we dedicating an entire video to talk about advertising just to learn how to sell better? Not exactly. Advertising isn't just a tool to sell products. It's one of the most honest mirrors reflecting society, culture, and even deeper than that, our human nature. Advertising doesn't just sell you a new pair of shoes or a luxury vacation. It sells you the idea of success, of beauty, of happiness, of the lifestyle you should pursue. It shapes trends in fashion, food, music, even the way we think about love, family, and the values we live by. It tells the story of who we are. Our fears, our longing for recognition, our desire to belong, our need for entertainment, our craving to own something better, or simply our hope to solve some tiny problem in our daily lives. Advertising reaches into the deepest layers of human nature, our primal wants and aspirations, cleverly packaged and presented in countless forms. It's psychological art, social science, and an inseparable part of human history. And that's exactly why I'm so excited to have you join me on this journey through this amazing book, A History of Advertising from the Earliest Times. This isn't just a dry history lesson about marketing campaigns or legendary advertisers. It's a time-traveling adventure, a decoding of how one of the oldest professions in the world has formed, evolved, and shaped our world. I'm certain that after this journey, you'll never look at advertising the same way again. You won't just see a logo, a slogan, or a product. You'll see a story, a cultural legacy, and even a piece of yourself in every billboard, every TV spot, every social media post you come across. Let's begin this fascinating journey together and see the world through a completely new lens. Welcome back to WealthRise Stories, where we don't just tell stories from the past, but dive into layers of meaning, unique lenses through which we explore human history. And I believe that history isn't a dry chain of events, but a tapestry woven from countless stories, ideas, and hidden motivations. And today, we're going to unravel one of the most fascinating tapestries, one of the sharpest mirrors reflecting human nature and the evolution of society. In the next 130 minutes, the length of a full movie or a long enough walk for you to really reflect, we're not just going to skim through timelines or iconic ad campaigns. No, my ambition reaches far beyond that. Together, we're going on a journey across time, not to study the history of advertising, but to explore human history through the lens of advertising. Imagine advertising as a form of cultural archaeology, where every street call, every poster, every TV commercial, every digital banner is a valuable artifact that tells us about the values, desires, fears, technologies, and even the naivete of an era long gone. When it comes to advertising, I know many of us instinctively frown or feel a certain hesitation. Ugh, ads again, a nuisance, an unwanted interruption to our experience. Or worse, a psychological manipulation tool pushing excessive consumerism. And I completely understand that feeling. Truly, there are cringy ads, unethical campaigns, misleading messages. But if we only look at advertising through that negative lens, we miss a much larger, deeper picture. To me, advertising isn't a necessary evil that needs to be eliminated, nor is it a simple byproduct of a market economy. I believe it's an inseparable part of human nature. A mirror reflecting our deepest desires, our hidden fears, and the relentless evolution of society. Think about it. From the dawn of civilization, when humans began forming communities, the need to communicate, share information, and persuade each other already existed. How do you announce a bountiful harvest? How do you find a skilled craftsman? How do you sell a unique item? These questions laid the foundation for the birth of advertising, a way to connect providers with those who needed what they offered, creating exchange and movement within society. Throughout this journey, I want us to look at advertising from a new perspective. It is an art form, a powerful tool, and a cultural heritage worth understanding. It is an art form. Believe it or not, advertising requires extraordinary creativity. From choosing images, words, music, to crafting a story in just a few seconds or a few pages, every part of it is a relentless creative process. The greatest minds in marketing and advertising have created works as influential as paintings, symphonies, or classic films. We'll see storytelling techniques, psychological tricks, breakthrough ideas that shaped how we think and feel about the world. A poster from the 1920s didn't just sell a product, it embodied the aesthetic of its time, a snapshot of lifestyle and the dreams people carried back then. It is a tool of power. The power to inform, to educate, sometimes to persuade, to shape markets, and even to change culture. A successful ad campaign can shift the habits of millions, elevate an unknown product into an icon, or even contribute to major social movements. Think of the ads during World War II calling women to join the workforce or public health campaigns. It's not just selling, it's a force that shapes society, reflecting and even driving major changes. And while this power may not always be used ethically, understanding, it is the key to critiquing it intelligently and demanding greater transparency. And finally, I believe advertising is an invaluable cultural heritage. Every ad, whether it's a lone street shout or a complex digital campaign, is a time capsule, a vivid record of what society valued, feared, desired, and how people lived. It tells us about fashion technology, food entertainment, moral standards, and social norms of its era. Looking at ads from decades past, we can see shifts in gender roles, the rise of environmental concerns, the growth of information technology. It's a massive archive of social psychology, economic history, and the evolution of human communication. To fully understand human history, we cannot overlook this unique cultural legacy. Our journey will begin with the earliest symbols, perhaps carvings on cave walls or clay inscriptions from thousands of years ago. We'll move through the echoing night markets of Babylon, the hand-painted signs of ancient Rome, the first prints of Gutenberg that changed everything, and then the golden age of television, radio, and magazines. Then we'll leap into the digital era we live in today, where advertising becomes eerily personalized, where artificial intelligence, AI, and big data are completely transforming how brands communicate with us. At each stage, we'll pause to reflect, how has advertising changed? And more importantly, what has it revealed about us? So set aside your preconceptions, open your mind, and get ready for a journey full of surprises. I believe that when these 130 minutes come to an end, you won't see advertising as a mere annoyance anymore. You'll see it as a fascinating mirror reflecting yourself and the entire history of humankind. Let's begin. We're about to dive into the first pages of A History of Advertising from the Earliest Times and uncover the earliest origins of an industry that has shaped the modern world. Welcome to my channel, where we explore fascinating stories hidden within the pages of books. And today, we're beginning an incredibly exciting journey. Have you ever wondered where advertising actually began? From the blinking LED signs on city streets, to the banners running across your phone screen, or even the catchy sounds on TikTok, advertising feels like an inseparable part of our modern lives. But did you know that the need for commercial communication and the need to tell others what you have to sell or who you represent has existed for a very, very long time? It wasn't invented in the 20th century or even the 18th. It's been around since the dawn of civilization, when humans first began exchanging and trading. To find the answer today, we're going to dissect the first pages of a classic book, A History of Advertising from the Earliest Times. And in this chapter 1, with the wonderfully evocative title, The First Cries, Ancient Origins, we're going to dive deep into the world of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome to see how they advertised. Let's turn back time together all the way to the origins of everything. 1. Stone tablets and papyrus. The earliest evidence of advertising. Don't think we're the only ones who need to promote products or services. When civilization began to take shape in ancient Egypt, around 3000 BC, people were already using writing to transmit messages. And trust me, one of the very first messages they wanted to share was advertising. Picture this. You're walking along a busy street in the ancient Thebes. Suddenly, you come across a stone tablet or a piece of papyrus posted in a public place. On it, instead of a pharaoh's decree, you might find a notice like this. A slave named Shem has been found 20 years old, tall, sunburned skin, braided hair. Whoever finds him and returns him to his master Happu, the weaver at the marketplace, will be rewarded with 1 gold coin. Sound familiar? Yep, that's basically one of the earliest classified ads. And it wasn't just for missing slaves. These papyrus notices and stone slabs were also used to advertise perfume, pottery, or even matchmaking services. This is our first clear evidence that people used writing for commercial communication to call others to action. We had a form of printed advertising thousands of years ago. Pretty amazing, right? 2. Street cries, word-of-mouth marketing, and personal branding. But not everyone could read, and not every message needed to be carved into stone or written on papyrus. As commerce expanded and markets grew busier, another form of advertising rose to prominence: powerful, direct, and far more human street cries. Imagine a bustling marketplace in ancient Athens or the Roman Forum. The noise of crowds, the clatter of carts, and above all, that the booming voices of street hawkers, what we might call town criers. They weren't just sellers. They were the first mobile broadcast stations, live and captivating. Fresh fish, fresh fish just caught from the Aegean Sea, delicious fine red wine from Tuscany, sweet as the love of the god of desire. They didn't just advertise products. They spread news, shared gossip, even sang songs praising their goods. The most skillful hawkers built a personal brand with their unique calls, trustworthy reputations, and ability to engage directly with customers. They were masters of word-of-mouth marketing, an ancient form of influencer marketing. Goods advertised by a famous, reliable hawker always sold better. Their personal credibility, their charisma became the key to success. 3. Symbols and signs, branding for the illiterate. So what about people who couldn't read? How would they know which shop was a bakery, a shoemaker, or a tavern? The answer lies in visual language, a form of advertising that transcends time and literacy. Walking through the streets of ancient Rome, you'd see walls decorated with symbolic images. A giant loaf of bread carved in stone or painted on a wall signaled a bakery. A shoe represented a cobbler. A bunch of grapes meant a wine shop. These symbols were essentially the very first logos. They were a brilliant way to create instant brand recognition. It didn't matter where you came from, what language you spoke, or whether you could read, you could still understand these symbols. They were a universal advertising language that helped people easily find what they needed. Think of Apple's Bitten Apple logo today. It's a refined continuation of those ancient grapes and shoes. A simple, memorable icon with huge communicative power. 4. Political advertising on the walls of Pompeii. And advertising didn't stop at commerce. To see the full picture of ancient communication, there's no place more vivid than Pompeii, the city buried under the ashes of Mount Vesuvius in AD 79. When archaeologists excavated Pompeii, they didn't just find houses and temples, they uncovered a treasure trove of advertisements on city walls and home exteriors. Not polished billboards, but scribbled messages written in charcoal or painted in red or blue. These weren't product ads, and they were political and social ads. We find election endorsements for candidate A, praise for gladiator, B, announcements of plays, arena fights, even ads selling houses or renting apartments. There were even complaints about the local government. Vote for C. Julius Polybius as city magistrate. He is a good man. Gladiator Maximus will perform tomorrow at the arena. The walls of Pompeii give us a vivid, authentic window into the media landscape of the time. They show that ancient people wanted to be informed, persuaded, entertained, and connected just like we do today. So you see, advertising isn't some modern invention full of algorithms and technology. It's been around since the dawn of civilization, seen in stone tablets, street cries, simple symbols, and political messages on ancient walls. The need to communicate exchange and persuade the very seeds of marketing were planted thousands of years ago. And this proves something powerful no matter how society evolves. Human nature, our desire to connect and interact, remains unchanged. These are just our first steps into the captivating history of advertising. In Chapter 2, we'll move into the medieval and Renaissance eras to see how advertising evolved as the world entered a new age. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, share it if you want your friends to learn something new, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next knowledge adventures together. See you in the upcoming videos. Welcome to Chapter 2 of this series, exploring the mesmerizing history of advertising, based on the classic book, A History of Advertising from the Earliest Times. If in Chapter 1, we looked at the very first rough sketches of advertising in ancient times, with wandering street cries and simple symbols on brick walls, then today we're stepping into a completely new era, one that forever changed how information is created, distributed, and most importantly, how products are sold. That era is the birth of print media, the age of the written word. Can you imagine a world where information is no longer the privilege of the elite of monasteries, or of the few who could painstakingly hand-copy hundreds of pages of text? A world where ideas could spread like wildfire, not just within one village, but across borders and continents. That is exactly what happened with the arrival of Gutenberg's printing press in the mid-15th century. The printing press, the democratization of information and commerce. Gutenberg didn't just invent a machine. He sparked a quiet revolution with unimaginable power. Before that, to have a book, someone had to copy it by hand, a process so labor-intensive and expensive that only the wealthy or large institutions could afford it. But with the printing press, this process sped up dramatically. Hundreds, even thousands of copies could be produced in a short time with drastically lower costs. What did this mean for advertising? A lot, actually. First, it democratized information. Knowledge was no longer locked away in libraries with gates and high walls. It started to flow out to the public. People began to read more, to learn more. And once people could read and write, they became a potential audience for a new kind of advertising, one built on written language. Second, it boosted commerce. As information about goods prices and services started flowing more easily through printed sheets, notices, and broadsides, the links between buyers and sellers became more direct and widespread. People could print product lists, announcements of new goods. The printing press laid the solid foundation for the rise of what we now call the press, a mass medium that would become fertile ground for advertising. The first classified ads in 17th century English newspapers. It wasn't until the 17th century, over 200 years after Gutenberg's invention, that advertising really exploded, especially in the early English newspapers. Picture those papers: no color, no flashy illustrations, just solid blocks of text. And tucked away inside those dry news columns were the very first classified ads. We find notices like "Lost Dog, Generous Reward Offered," "For Sale 3-Story House with Orchard Servant Wanted," or "New Latin Class Now Open." These ads were incredibly simple and straightforward, usually containing only the basics: what is being sold, sought, who is selling, seeking, and how to get in touch. No flowery language, no punchy slogans. They were pure communication tools connecting demand with supply. And yet, that simplicity was foundational. For the first time, sellers had a channel to reach hundreds or thousands of potential readers at once, without having to stand in the middle of a marketplace shouting or pinning notices on public boards. This was a massive leap, turning advertising from a personal local activity into something on a much larger scale. Advertising was starting to have a home of its own. The rise of quackery. Advertising quack medicines and the ethics lesson. However, when the doors of information swing wide open, good things aren't the only ones that walk through. Along with the boom in newspapers and advertising, we also see the disturbing rise of quackery ads for quack medicines and bogus cures with no scientific basis. Think about it in a society where medicine was limited, diseases were rampant, and scientific information wasn't widely available. People were easily swayed by promises of miracles. The printing press and newspapers became powerful tools for these charlatans. They could easily mass-produce flyers or buy space in newspapers to promote miracle cures that supposedly treated everything from gout to malaria, from hair loss to extended longevity. These ads used exaggerated language, made absurd promises, and preyed on people's desperation and lack of knowledge. Dr. X's elixir of life, Professor Y's reviving balsam, the final solution to all disease names that sounded scientific and credible. but were really just mixtures of harmless ingredients at best or outright harmful substances at worst. Tragically, many people trusted and used them with serious, sometimes deadly consequences. This was a harsh ethics lesson for the advertising industry. It exposed the dark side of media power when there's no oversight or regulation. Even in the industry's early dawn, questions of truth and responsibility were already being raised. How do we distinguish honest advertising from fraud? Who is responsible for verifying the claims? These questions still matter today as we grapple with fake news and misleading ads across digital platforms. Words as weapons. The power of early copywriting. So what did these quacks do to sell their products when those products had little or no real value? They used words as a razor-sharp weapon. This is where we begin to see the birth and growth of early copywriting. The art of writing to sell. When they couldn't rely on images or video, the power of words became supreme. Advertisers of that time learned how to use language to trigger fear. Are you suffering from this condition? Don't let it destroy your life. Offer hope. With this remedy, you'll regain your youth and vibrant health. Create scarcity, limited supply. Buy now before it's gone. Invent fake proof. Hundreds have been cured. Read these testimonials. Words were no longer just about listing information. They were used to persuade, stir emotion, and drive action. They transformed a dry notice into a seductive invitation. Advertisers started studying human psychology, learning how a single phrase could tap into someone's desires, fears, or deepest hopes. They learned to tell a story, even if it was a story about a fake cure, just to capture attention. The power of these lines proved that even if a product is terrible, if you can write persuasively, you can still sell it. And conversely, even a great product needs compelling words to reach the public. That's why copywriting, the art of writing ads, became an essential skill, a pillar of the advertising world, and one that still holds its value today. So, as you can see, from Gutenberg's groundbreaking invention to the birth of newspapers, to the first classified ads, the rise of quackery and the growing power of language advertising evolved from crude beginnings into a real industry. It gained a powerful delivery system, a persuasive toolkit, and started facing ethical challenges we're still trying to solve today. The printing press didn't just democratize information. It democratized access to customers for businesses of all sizes, even the smallest. It turned the written word into an indispensable sales tool and opened up a new era in which advertising was no longer just about announcing something. It became the art of persuasion. The journey of advertising is still long and full of twists and turns. In the next chapter, we'll explore how advertising developed even more in the 18th and 19th centuries, with new formats, the first advertising agencies, and increasingly sophisticated strategies. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in Chapter 3. In the previous chapter, we traveled through the earliest traces of advertising, from Roman signboards to the town criers and marketplaces. But today, my friend, brace yourself, because we're stepping into an era where everything changed at lightning speed, an era of steam, steel, and brand names you will recognize instantly. This is Chapter 3, the Industrial Revolution, the boom of branding. If you think back to the 1700s, the world was a very different place. Nearly everything you used was handmade, crafted by local artisans, or produced within families. You bought flour, you bought soap, but you didn't really care where it came from as long as it worked. It was just flour, just soap, nameless, soulless products. But then a true earthquake shook the world forever, transforming how we produced, consumed, and even how we thought about ourselves. The Industrial Revolution. Massive factories sprang up like mushrooms, machines roared day and night, and suddenly goods weren't made one at a time anymore. They were produced in huge quantities on a scale the world had never seen. From textiles to sugar, from soap to packaged foods, everything flooded the markets. And this is when advertising, once a simple tool for making announcements, transformed into a complex art and science, a vital part of the modern economy. Our mission today is to explore how advertising grew explosively alongside mass production, and how the birth of iconic brands shaped the modern consumer culture we live in today. Think about it: when thousands of identical bars of soap hit the market, how do you convince consumers to choose yours instead of someone else's? That was the question manufacturers had to answer. And the answer came down to one thing: branding. From anonymous products, we now witness the birth of familiar names, symbols that would stand strong for centuries. Let's begin with a classic example: Pears soap. Before, Pears soap was just soap. But Pears changed everything. They didn't just sell a bar of soap, they sold the idea of purity, beauty, luxury. They used images of adorable children and famous artwork like John Everett Millet's painting Bubbles, now forever linked to Pears soap, to create an emotional, powerful brand identity. You didn't buy Pears soap because it was just soap. You bought it because it represented a lifestyle, a level of refinement. They created a desire that hadn't existed before the desire for a specific soap brand. And then perhaps no brand is more iconic or more widespread than Coca-Cola. Born in a pharmacy in Atlanta in the late 1800s, Coca-Cola was originally marketed as a brain tonic and fatigue remedy. But they quickly realized the power of building a unique image. From the flowing Spencerian script created by Frank M. Robinson to the unmistakable contour bottle, a shape you could recognize by touch in the dark Coca-Cola, turned itself into a global icon. Their ads didn't just talk about the drink, they talked about refreshment, joy, and connection. They transformed Coca-Cola from an unknown beverage into a staple of popular culture, a brand woven into everyday life. You see, these were no longer generic products. This was a battle of names, images, and the stories brands told us. But how did these stories, these brand images, actually reach consumers, especially in a world without supermarkets or television? One of the most effective mobile advertising tools of the era was something we often overlook: product packaging. Before the Industrial Revolution, when you bought sugar or flour, the sellers simply scooped it into a plain paper or cloth bag. No logo, no imagery, nothing special. But with mass production came a dramatic transformation in packaging. Packaging became more than just a container. It became a miniature poster, a silent salesperson on the shelf, even though shelves in the modern sense didn't fully exist yet. Bright colors, unique designs, bold logos, and sometimes short advertising messages printed directly on the box, all of it turned packaging into a highly effective mobile form of advertising. Imagine standing in a small general store. Among countless nameless goods, suddenly you see a cereal box with a fun illustration, a catchy name, and vibrant colors. You'd be drawn to it, right? That's the power of packaging. It made products stand out, communicated quality differentiation and brand value, even when no salesperson was there to explain it. It was a direct bridge between the brand and the consumer at the point of purchase. With the growing complexity of mass production and the rising need for branding, a completely new industry emerged to support it. This was the birth of the first advertising agencies. In the beginning, advertising was mainly about buying space in newspapers and magazines. Manufacturers would write their own ads or ask editors to help. But as markets expanded, this became overwhelming. Newspaper publishers needed help selling ad space, and manufacturers needed help creating ads that actually worked. And so, advertising brokers began to appear. Names like Volney B. Palmer in the 1840s in Philadelphia, and later George P. Rowell in the 1860s in Boston, are considered pioneers in establishing true advertising agencies. Initially, they were simply middlemen, buying ad space wholesale and selling it at a markup. But over time, their role evolved. They didn't just sell space. They started advising on copywriting, on visual design, on selecting the right media. They became the crucial bridge between manufacturers and the public, bringing professionalism and strategy to advertising. This was a huge leap, transforming advertising from scattered activity into a structured service industry, laying the foundation for the massive ad agencies we know today. Of course, all these mass-produced products, these new brands needed to reach consumers, not just locally, but far beyond. Thanks to the Industrial Revolution, the world shrank dramatically through another major revolution, the Transportation Revolution. Railways and steamships weren't just engineering marvels, they were powerful engines driving the spread of brand messages. Consider railways. Before them, transporting goods over long distances was slow, costly, and difficult. But with an expanding rail network, products could travel across entire countries in days instead of weeks or months. A manufacturer in London could sell to consumers in Scotland or even in distant colonies, and it wasn't just about moving products. Railway stations became bustling hubs where thousands passed through daily. This created a golden opportunity for advertising. Large, colorful posters began appearing on station walls beside the tracks and even inside train cars. Your brand could be seen by thousands of eyes every day, traveling far and wide with passengers. Similarly, steamships transformed oceans into highways. Goods and information could cross the seas with unprecedented speed and reliability. A British brand could easily reach the American market and vice versa. This didn't just expand product markets, it expanded the reach of advertising itself, turning it into a global phenomenon. In short, railways and steamships created national then international markets, enabling brands to break free from geographic limitations and spread their names and stories to the far corners of a rapidly developing world. So, my friend, we've now seen how the Industrial Revolution didn't just change how we produced goods, it changed how we perceived products and how we bought them. From nameless items, we witnessed the rise of brands like Pears Soap and Coca-Cola, iconic names etched into the minds of millions. We saw how packaging evolved from a simple container into a silent advertising warrior. We explored the birth of the first advertising agencies, which laid the groundwork for today's strategic professional ad industry. And finally, we looked at the crucial role of railways and steamships vehicles that carried brand messages across all borders, creating a global marketplace. Advertising in this era wasn't just about selling, it was about creating recognition, building trust, shaping desires, and even defining parts of culture. This was the first solid brick in the foundation of modern consumerism. Every time you look at a logo, a product package, or an ad on the street, think back to this chapter where it all began. In the next chapter, we'll dive even deeper into how advertising grew more sophisticated, using psychology and art to influence consumers in increasingly powerful ways. Don't miss it. Thank you for joining me on this fascinating historical journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. See you in Chapter 4. Welcome back to the channel. I'm WealthRise Stories, and today we're going to continue our journey into the world of advertising. But this time, get ready, because we're stepping into a completely different era. If the previous chapters were about baby steps, about rough early attempts to reach customers, then Chapter 4, the Golden Age. The art of persuasion is where advertising truly explodes, becoming both a science and a powerful art form. Are you ready to pull back the curtain with me on the classic campaigns and iconic images that have been etched into the minds of millions? Let's dive in. 1. Applying psychology, diving into the subconscious. Picture this: up until the early 20th century, advertising was mostly about giving information. We sell X. Product Y costs this much. Simple, direct, but also pretty boring, right? Then a quiet revolution took place. Advertisers started to realize that people don't act purely on logic. We are walking bundles of emotions with hidden fears, burning desires, and aspirations that we ourselves may not even fully understand. This was the moment psychology began to be applied to advertising. It was no longer about selling a product. It was about selling a feeling, a solution, a dream. Tapping into fear. Do you remember the story of Listerine toothpaste before that? It was just an antiseptic. But then some genius advertisers turned it into the cure for halitosis, a social problem no one wanted to talk about, but everyone secretly dreaded. The campaign. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride, dug into the fear of rejection, of being left out. Who isn't afraid of being isolated because of something they don't even realize about themselves? And just like that, Listerine went from a medicinal solution to a social necessity. Or think of life insurance. It doesn't just sell policies. It sells peace of mind, answering the fear of an uncertain future for your family. Kinda mind-blowing, isn't it? Awakening desire and aspirations. But it wasn't always about fear. Campaigns were also brilliant at tapping into people's positive desires. Cosmetics didn't just promise better skin, they promised confidence, allure, sometimes even social status. Cars weren't just about transportation. They were symbols of freedom, success, and adventure. If you pay attention, you'll see that ads from this period started painting entire lifestyles images of the person you could become by owning a certain product. The arrival of ad titans like Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew, considered the father of modern public relations, whose thinking heavily influenced advertising, and Walter Dill Scott with his book, The Psychology of Advertising, turned advertising from simple buying and selling into a tool for shaping public thought and behavior. They weren't just selling products. They were selling ideas, emotions. And that's when I realized that advertising, to some extent, can be both a powerful tool and a double-edged sword. 2. The rise of the image. When a picture speaks 1,000 words. While psychology changed the way ads thought, technology changed the way ads looked. You know, earlier ads were mostly text-heavy, sometimes with simple illustrations. But with advances in photography and printing techniques, especially color lithography, advertising entered a new era. The era of imagery, emotional power. A beautiful photograph or vivid illustration can deliver emotion faster, more strongly, and across language barriers in a way long paragraphs never could. Just looking at a mouth-watering picture of food is enough to make you feel hungry, right? Or seeing a graceful, beautiful woman makes you want the product she's using. Images create instant connection. They slip into the viewer's mind with ease, simplifying the message. Not everyone has the time or patience to read everything. A strong image can summarize an entire message in just a few seconds. This became especially important as ads started showing up on big billboards in newspapers and in magazines in ever-increasing numbers. Aesthetics and aspiration. Ads stopped being just information and became tiny works of art. Illustrations created by talented artists, photos carefully staged and beautifully shot. These made ads more attractive, more memorable, and sometimes even collectible. A product advertised with stunning visuals wasn't just selling itself. It was selling a lifestyle, a sense of class. From glamorous fashion ads in magazines to sharp close-up product shots, everything showed that images had truly begun to replace text as the main language of advertising. This was the foundation for our modern multimedia campaigns, where the visuals and video completely dominate. 3. Timeless advertising icons, more than just a product. Did you know that the characters and mascots we see in advertising today, brand icons, brand ambassadors, actually began forming in this era? This was the time when brands realized that to truly carve themselves into the consumer's memory, they needed more than just a product name. They needed a symbol. Coca-Cola's Santa Claus. This is probably one of the most legendary stories about the power of advertising. Before the 1930s, Santa Claus looked very different sometimes, an elf-like figure, sometimes a thin old man, sometimes dressed in green. But in 1931, Coca-Cola commissioned artist Haddon Sundblom to create a Santa Claus for their Christmas campaign. That's when the plump, jolly Santa with the white beard and red and white suit we know today was born. He didn't just advertise Coca-Cola. He became the embodiment of Christmas spirit, joy, warmth, togetherness. Coca-Cola didn't invent Santa, but they standardized his image in the minds of billions of people. Pretty wild, right? That's branding power. The Marlboro Man. Another equally spectacular story. In the 1950s, Marlboro was originally positioned as a women's cigarette with a red filter tip to hide lipstick stains. But as public concern about the health risks of smoking grew, Marlboro wanted to expand to male smokers. The Leo Burnett Agency launched a bold campaign. They created the Marlboro Man, a rugged cowboy, strong, free, masculine. He didn't say a word, but his image delivered a powerful message of independence and toughness. In just a few years, Marlboro transformed from a feminine brand into one of the best-selling cigarette brands in the world. Even though it promoted a harmful product, we can't deny the sheer genius of the campaign's strategy. These icons weren't just pretty visuals. They were embodiments of stories, values, and emotions that brands wanted to be associated with. They became part of popular culture, outliving the very products they were created to sell. 4. Advertising in wartime. Propaganda and building patriotism. And finally, we can't talk about this era without mentioning one extremely powerful dimension of advertising: its role in wartime. When nations needed unity, needed to mobilize resources, and spirit, advertising became a potent and effective propaganda tool. Recruitment and hero-making. You've heard of the famous slogan, "Uncle Sam wants you right." It's a prime example of using advertising to recruit young men into the Army during World War I. Posters of Uncle Sam pointing directly at the viewer created a highly personalized call to action, hard to ignore. Advertising also helped portray soldiers as heroes, protectors of the homeland, stirring patriotism and willingness to sacrifice, saving and supporting the war effort. In both World Wars, people on the home front played crucial roles. Ad campaigns encouraged citizens to save food and fuel. Loose lips sink ships warned people about sharing sensitive information that could be used by the enemy, or to buy war bonds to fund the war. These messages weren't just simple reminders. They built a sense of shared purpose and civic duty. Propaganda and morale advertising was also used to boost national morale, demonize the enemy, and reinforce belief in eventual victory. These ads weren't selling a product. They were selling an ideology, a national ideal. It's one of the clearest examples of how advertising can shape society and deeply influence the thinking and behavior of an entire nation. Wartime advertising proved that the power of persuasion goes far beyond consumerism. It can guide the cultural and emotional direction of a whole people. Pretty incredible, isn't it? The golden age of advertising was not just a historical phase. It was a major turning point that shaped how we interact with the world around us to this day. From using psychology to tap into our deepest fears and desires to the explosive rise of imagery, the creation of immortal icons, and the undeniable role of advertising in shaping social consciousness and patriotism in wartime, the techniques and strategies developed during this era are still widely used today and often form the foundation of modern advertising. They show us that to persuade people, you first have to understand people. Personally, I find this chapter both fascinating and deeply thought-provoking. It reveals an extraordinary power in the hands of those who create ads, while also raising serious questions about their responsibility. So we've now explored one of the most colorful and groundbreaking eras in the history of advertising. Don't forget to like and share this video if you found it interesting, and leave a comment below to tell me which advertising icon from this era impressed you the most. In the next chapter, we'll look at what happens when advertising becomes too powerful, and how it was forced to adapt to new challenges in a rapidly changing world. See you there. Welcome back to the History of Advertising, where we explore the stories, ideas, and people who shape the world we live in today. If in the previous chapters we walked through the early dawn of advertising from rough street cries to the booming post-World War II consumer era filled with loud, flashy, and sometimes wildly exaggerated promises, then buckle up, because in this chapter, we're about to witness a real earthquake. A revolution that didn't just change the face of Madison Avenue, but reflected and fueled an entire era of upheaval. This is Chapter 5. The Creative Revolution. Breaking the rules. Picture this. We're in the early 1960s. America is at the peak of prosperity, but underneath the surface, a wave of skepticism and a hunger for change is boiling. Young people are starting to question traditional values, criticize rampant consumerism, and reject the empty promises of the perfect life portrayed on TV and in magazines. They want authenticity. They want difference. And in that very atmosphere, advertising, once seen as the master of gloss and exaggeration, became the unlikely spearhead of innovation, rebellion, and truth. This was the moment creativity rose to power. Humor became acceptable. Minimalism was celebrated. And most importantly, truth, raw, unfiltered truth, was welcomed. And when we talk about this revolution, we cannot skip one legendary name, Bill Bernbach. Bernbach wasn't just a creative director. He was a philosopher, a psychologist, a man who saw untapped potential buried deep within the advertising industry. He was the soul behind DDB Doyle Dane Bernbach, an agency whose philosophy became the guiding star for an entire generation. Bernbach's philosophy was simple, but shockingly powerful truth well told. He believed a good product didn't need to be inflated with grandiose words. Instead, you find the truth, the strengths, the weaknesses, the personality, and present it in a smart, unexpected, and above all honest way. He famously said, "The truth isn't the truth until people believe you, and they can't believe you if they don't know what you're saying, and they can't know what you're saying if they're not listening." This was a seismic shock to the advertising world, which at the time was full of long jargon, heavy copy, and feature lists. Bernbach wanted to speak to customers as intelligent human beings, not as fools waiting to be tricked. And the ultimate embodiment of this philosophy, the campaign still held up as the gold standard of creativity, was the Think Small campaign for the Volkswagen Beetle. Think about the context. America was obsessed with big, shiny, chrome-heavy cars, powered by roaring V8 engines. A car wasn't just transportation. It was a status symbol, the embodiment of the American dream. And then, out of nowhere, came a tiny, oddly shaped car with a German badge the country America had fought not long before. The Volkswagen Beetle. It was slow. It was funny-looking by American standards. It had nothing flashy to show off. How on earth do you sell that to Americans? Traditional agencies might have tried to make it look bigger, faster, more luxurious. But Bernbach and DDB did the complete opposite. They embraced the Beetle's flaws, its small size, its quirky shape, and turned them into strengths. They transformed naked truth into humor and sincerity. The Think Small ad was a slap in the face to flashy consumerism. A tiny black beetle floated on a sea of white space with one short, razor-sharp headline: Think small, bold, unexpected, It didn't brag, it didn't promise the moon. It simply acknowledged reality and invited consumers to rethink. It said, yes, we're small, but that means better fuel economy, easy parking, low maintenance. It turned nothing to brag about into nothing to hide, and that wasn't all. Another legendary ad, Lemon. The ad featured a perfectly fine-looking beetle, but the headline read, Lemon. Underneath the copy explained that this car had been rejected because of a tiny, barely noticeable scratch on the glove compartment. DDB wasn't afraid to admit Volkswagen could make mistakes, but they showed that the company's standards were so high, they'd discard an almost flawless car. This was truth well told at its finest, cleverly proving reliability and craftsmanship. The Volkswagen campaign didn't just sell millions of Beetles, it changed advertising forever. It proved that honesty, humor, and minimalism could be more persuasive than 1,000 flashy claims. It didn't just sell a product, it sold an attitude. It was a rallying cry for those who wanted to break from the crowd and valued practicality over pretense. So what made the magic at DDB possible? It wasn't just Birnbach. It was the way he rebuilt the creative machine from the ground up. Before DDB, art directors and copywriters worked separately. Art directors handled layout. Copywriters supplied text. They rarely collaborated closely. Birnbach broke this wall. He paired them together side by side as a true creative duo. They weren't two people doing two jobs. They were two halves of one creative brain. Art directors thought beyond visuals. Copywriters thought beyond words. Together, they created a synergy where image and message intertwined perfectly. This became the foundation of the modern creative team structure used in agencies worldwide, and it wasn't only advertising that was changing. The 1960s weren't just a revolution on Madison Avenue, they were a revolution across American society. It was the era of the civil rights movement, the feminist wave, and protests against war. Naturally, advertising couldn't stand aside. It began reflecting these changes, and sometimes even pushing them forward. We started to see ads showing more independent women, not just housewives or decorative models. They appeared in workplaces in active roles. It was still early, imperfect, often full of stereotypes, but it was a meaningful step compared to previous decades. Likewise, those slowly and cautiously racially diverse faces began appearing in ads, chipping away at the all-white imagery that had long dominated screens and print. Advertising wasn't just selling products, it was selling a vision of the world we were moving toward. It reflected social struggles, ideals of equality, dreams of freedom. It proved that advertising is not merely a commercial tool, but also a cultural mirror, and sometimes even a cultural engine. The creative revolution of the 1960s shaped modern advertising. It taught us that truth, honesty, humor, and creativity are the most powerful weapons. It proved that daring to be different, daring to go against the crowd, can lead to extraordinary success. It reminds us that advertising doesn't need to scream to be heard. Sometimes a simple think small is enough to shake the world. This was the moment advertising evolved from salesperson to storyteller, from pitchman to conversationalist, becoming an inseparable part of life and culture. A new chapter had begun, and it would continue to grow and adapt through every societal shift in the decades to come. Welcome back to our enchanting journey through the world of advertising. I'm WealthRise Stories. And today we're turning to a completely different page of history, an era that's probably the most familiar to many of us. From the stillness of printed newspapers, from the invisible waves of radio, we're now stepping into a brand new age where the real battlefield isn't somewhere far away, but right inside your living room. Yes, I'm talking about the age of television. Picture this in the early years of television. It was nothing short of magic. A little box that could bring the entire world into the most private space of every family. I still remember the feeling of watching TV for the first time, the pull of moving images, the vivid sound. It was completely different from just listening to the radio or reading the newspaper. And that very magic sparked a revolution in advertising, forever changing the way brands tell stories. And more importantly, how they shape our popular culture. Chapter 6. The Television Era. The living room becomes a battlefield. Our goal in this chapter is to dive deep into the dominance of television and how it transformed the way brands tell stories, creating unforgettable marks on popular culture. 1. The power of the 30-second TV spot and the birth of Super Bowl ads. Before television ads could last for minutes on radio or take up an entire newspaper page. But TV introduced a new format, short, condensed, and shockingly powerful, the 30-second commercial, also known as the TV spot. Think about it. How do you pack a story, a message, and a call to action into just half a minute? That's an art form, a challenge, and a revolution all at once. Advertisers now had to be more creative than ever, using visual sound and emotion to deliver a strong punch that landed instantly in the audience's mind. And when the power of the TV spot reached its peak, we saw the birth of a very special phenomenon, Super Bowl ads. More than just a football game, the Super Bowl became a gigantic stage for the advertising industry. Millions, even tens of millions of dollars are spent for those precious 30 seconds. Why so expensive? Because this is the one time of year when hundreds of millions of people in America and now around the world sit down and wait to watch ads. I have to admit, sometimes I look forward to the commercials more than the actual game. Super Bowl ads don't just sell products. They tell hilarious, touching, or shocking stories that spark heated conversations across social media. Even before social media existed, they were already water cooler talk at the office and in schools. They are living proof that a commercial doesn't have to be just a marketing message. It can be a work of art, a cultural event. 2. The birth of jingles and slogans that lodge in our subconscious. But TV isn't just about images. It's the perfect blend of sight and sound, opening the door for two incredibly powerful advertising tools, jingles and slogans. Think about it, a fun, catchy little tune repeated over and over, along with product images. Or a short, punchy line that sums up the entire essence of a brand. Those cheerful melodies and tight phrases slip into your mind and just stay there. I'm sure you're like me. There are slogans or jingles from childhood that you can still recite instantly, even if the product no longer exists. Just do it. From Nike, think different. From Apple, or those old jingles from toothpaste brands, soda companies, and more. They're not just words or notes. They're bullets straight into the subconscious, creating an instant link between that sound or phrase and a specific brand. When you hear a certain ding-dong, what do you think of? When a familiar tune plays, do you automatically think of a certain soda? That's the power of jingles and slogans. They create their own language, becoming part of our everyday communication culture. 3. Advertising and pop culture. Wendy's, where's the beef? Television advertising isn't just about selling things. It has an extraordinary ability to create shape and reflect popular culture. One of the most classic examples we can't skip is Wendy's Where's the Beef campaign from 1984. The story goes like this. 3 elderly ladies are eating hamburgers from a competing fast food chain. They stare at the comically tiny bun and patty, and one of them, Clara Peller, shrieks in her distinctive voice, "Where's the beef?" That punchline wasn't just a hit campaign for Wendy's, it became a full-blown cultural phenomenon. The phrase, "Where's the beef?" spread rapidly across America, turning into a common expression used to call out a lack of substance, or not getting what was promised in all kinds of situations, from politics to everyday life. President Ronald Reagan even used the phrase during a campaign debate. This is the clearest proof that a successful commercial can break out of the TV screen and enter our everyday language, becoming part of cultural heritage. It shows that advertising isn't just about transmitting information. It's a powerful tool for creating trends memes before we even had the word meme and conversations with far-reaching impact. 4. The rise of celebrity endorsement. When famous faces vouch for brands. With television's rise, we saw the explosion of celebrity endorsements, famous people lending their names and faces to brands. It was no longer just a doctor in a white lab coat explaining the science behind a product. Now it was movie stars, singers, and athletes we admire, trust, and want to emulate. A charming Hollywood actor sipping a particular soda, a legendary athlete wearing a specific pair of sneakers, or a famous singer using a certain cosmetic brand brought a completely new magnetism to the product. The reason is simple. We trust our idols. We want to be like them. We think that if they use it, it must be good, cool, premium. This created a symbiotic relationship between the entertainment world and advertising. Celebrities got more income and exposure, while brands gained valuable credibility from beloved, recognizable faces. Even though we may be more skeptical today about how authentic these endorsements are, it's impossible to deny how strongly a celebrity can influence our buying decisions. Let's be honest, who among us hasn't at least once considered buying something just because our favorite star used it? Our living rooms, once peaceful havens, truly became lively battlegrounds for brands. Television brought in a completely new form of storytelling, turning 30-second spots into tiny masterpieces, jingles into unforgettable melodies, slogans into catchphrases, and celebrities into trusted salespeople. Television didn't just sell products. It sold lifestyles, values, and sometimes even dreams. It shaped our worldview, turned a question about beef into a nationwide catchphrase, and made watching commercials an essential part of the entertainment experience. It was an era where the power of image and sound fused to create a cultural imprint that simply can't be erased. But like every era, television's dominance eventually faced a new challenger, a different technological revolution brewing quietly in the background. And we'll explore that in the next chapter. Before we wrap up, do you remember a TV commercial that helped shape part of your memory? A jingle, a slogan, or a story that made you burst out laughing or stop and think? Share it below. I'd love to hear your stories. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Awesome. Welcome to Chapter 7. Personally, the chapter I find the most exciting and the most revolutionary in the entire history of advertising we've been exploring. If the previous chapters were about foundations, then this one is about a true earthquake, a transformation that can never be reversed. Let's step together into the age of the click, where the internet changed the game entirely. Welcome back to WealthRise Stories, and today we're turning the pages of one of the most turbulent eras in advertising, when it collided head-on with a new force, the global network, the World Wide Web. If advertising used to be about giant billboards, colorful print spreads, catchy radio tunes, or vibrant television imagery, then now everything has been compressed into a tiny rectangular box on your screen waiting for a click. That click, it wasn't just an action. It was a promise of interactivity, of measurement, and above all, of a new kind of power placed directly into the hands of consumers. 1. The first banner ad and its ridiculous click-through rate. Let's rewind to 1994, a time when the internet was still a wild, unexplored frontier for almost everyone. Computer screens were pixelated dial-up tones echoed through living rooms. And then, on a website called Hot Wired, one of the very first online magazines, something new appeared. A small, pale little rectangle with the text, "Have you ever clicked your mouse? Right here you will." This was the world's first banner ad, created by AT&T. Simple, almost silly, right? But that tiny banner triggered a shockwave. Its click-through rate, CTR, was 44%. Can you even imagine that 44%? Nearly half of everyone who saw it clicked. It's an insane number one that even the best ads today can't dream of achieving. Most modern banner ads are lucky to hit 0.1% to 0.5%. Why was it so high? Because it was brand new. The feeling of clicking an image and being transported somewhere else back then, it felt magical, almost surreal. Like stepping into a store or watching a video instantly. This was the first building block of the entire digital advertising industry. It proved that the internet wasn't just a place to read, it was a place to market. 2. The rise of search engines and the SEO.SM revolution. But nothing stays simple forever. As the internet exploded, websites multiplied, and users ran into a new problem. How do you find anything in this ocean of content? And that's when the heroes arrived, the search engines. First, Yahoo Alta Vista Lycos, and then a garage startup called Google. Search engines completely changed the landscape. Advertising stopped being about showing up anywhere. Now it was about showing up at the exact moment someone searched for something. Enter two concepts that would reshape digital marketing: SEO and SEM, SEO, search engine optimization. Simply put, it's the fierce behind-the-scenes battle to get your website to appear naturally, organically at the top of Google's results. When someone types a relevant keyword, it's like owning a cafe downtown and magically having it pop up first whenever someone searches best coffee near me. To do that, you need to understand algorithms, optimize content, fix site structure, and enhance dozens of technical elements. SEM, search engine marketing. Much easier to grasp. You pay to show up. Paid ads appear at the top or bottom of search results, and you pay per click, PPC. It's like renting a giant billboard right outside your shop that everyone has to walk past. This shift birthed an entire industry. Businesses could target with precision like never before, reaching people who were actively showing intent. Marketing effectiveness became measurable: number of searches, number of clicks, number of purchases. This marked the beginning of a new era, the age of measurement. 3. Spam pop-ups and the dark side of digital advertising. But as with every revolution, digital's rise brought a dark side. When the internet became a gold mine, miners were willing to do anything. Remember pop-ups? Oh, I'm sure you do. Sometimes they still haunt us today, though far fewer survive thanks to blockers. They were those obnoxious windows that exploded across your screen, often with microscopic X buttons, and closing one only summoned two more. They were an absolute nightmare of the late 90s and early 2000s, breaking browsing flow and infuriating users. And then there was spam. Yes, the infamous junk email. Tens, hundreds of emails flooding your inbox every day screaming, "Get rich fast, increase your stamina instantly, you've won the lottery. A Nigerian prince needs your help." Spam wasn't just annoying, it wasted time, consumed server space, and introduced risks of scams and viruses. It was a stain on early digital advertising and quickly eroded trust. It proved that without regulation, internet freedom could and would be abused. 4. The shift from monologue mass media to dialogue email forums. Despite the dark side, the internet brought one of the most profound and positive shifts in brand communication: the transformation from monologue to dialogue. Before digital ads were one way, brands spoke through TV, radio, and newspapers. Consumers listened. There was no easy way to answer back. It was like a speech: speaker speaks, audience listens. Then everything changed. Email marketing emerged not just as a way to send ads, but as a channel for personalized relationships. Brands could send tailored messages based on purchase history and user interests. Consumers could reply directly, ask questions, give feedback. Personalization at a level mass media could never achieve. Online forums, chat rooms, and later the earliest social platforms created spaces where consumers talked not only to brands, but to each other. Recommendations, reviews, complaints, everything became public, traceable, and powerful. Advertising stopped being a speech. It became a conversation. Brands learned the value of listening, of gathering feedback, of building communities around products. Consumers gained unprecedented power. A positive review could be the strongest ad. A bad experience could be a disaster. I still remember creating a Yahoo Messenger ID or being in forums for gaming and tech. That's where my friends and I traded opinions, asked for advice, and warned each other about bad products. That was the beginning of consumer empowerment. And that right there is Chapter 7. The Rise of Digital. The age of the click revealed a giant leap forward in the advertising history. From crude but revolutionary banner ads to the sophistication of SEO, yes SEM, from the headaches of spam and pop-ups to the transformative shift from monologue to dialogue, the internet didn't just provide a new channel, it reinvented the very essence of advertising. It brought precision measurement, user-level insights, and two-way interaction. It turned consumers from passive recipients into active participants. And remember, this was only the beginning. The age of the click is merely the prelude to what comes next in the explosion of social media, big data, artificial intelligence, and the ways they will continue to reshape advertising in unstoppable ways. Thank you for joining me in this chapter. Share in the comments. What's your most memorable early internet experience? And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter, where we dive into the age of social media and data personalization. If in the previous chapters we looked back at a time when advertising was a one-way monologue from sellers to consumers, then today, everything changes. We're stepping into Chapter 8, the social media revolution. When consumers speak up. Do you remember what it felt like to hold a magazine in your hands or to watch a TV commercial? Back then, we were passive receivers of information. Ads said something, and we just listened. But then the internet arrived, and especially social media. It came like a digital storm sweeping through every corner of our lives. And the most fascinating part is this: it handed the microphone to us, the consumers. From being people who were simply told what to hear, we became people who participate, create, and critique. Let's take a moment to reflect on this great revolution together. Let's start with the main arenas, the new battlefields for advertising: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Each of these platforms, as you can see, has its own personality, and of course each is also a very different advertising stage. Facebook originally a place to connect with friends and family. But very quickly it turned into a gigantic digital marketplace. Businesses from tiny corner shops to giant multinational corporations all rushed in. Facebook allows for incredibly detailed ad targeting based on interests, behavior, and even user relationships. A stay-at-home mom in GoVap might see ads for baby strollers, while a programmer in District 1 might get ads for AI courses. Advertising here is often about storytelling, building community, and nurturing long-term relationships. You're not just buying a product, you're buying into a story, a lifestyle. Then comes Twitter, the fast heartbeat of information. Unlike Facebook, Twitter is a public, real-time conversation. Ads on Twitter have to be short, punchy, and often tied to trending topics or hot events. This is where brands show how quick they can think, interact directly with customers, and even handle crises in real time. A customer question on Twitter can get a response within minutes, something unimaginable in the past. Its power lies in how fast information can spread, both positive and negative. And we can't forget Instagram, where beauty reigns. With its focus on visuals and video, Instagram became a paradise for fashion, beauty, travel, and food. Ads here aren't just about selling products. They're about selling experiences, selling a lifestyle. The visuals have to be stunning, aesthetically pleasing, and inspiring. Brands use Instagram to build a dream world where their products are an indispensable part of that perfection. But it's not just the platforms, it's the people on them who truly change the game. And that leads us to a phenomenon that has reshaped the entire ad industry, the rise of influencer marketing. Do you remember the old days when a glamorous movie star appeared on TV saying they loved product X? Did we believe them? Maybe. But that belief always felt a bit distant. Then social media arrived, and we started seeing people who felt more like us. Bloggers, vloggers, creators with thousands or millions of followers. They weren't Hollywood superstars. They were people with expertise, clear interests, and most importantly, they had the trust of their communities. Influencer marketing works because it taps into authenticity, or at least the feeling of authenticity. When a creator you love, someone you follow every day, recommends a product, it doesn't feel like a dry ad anymore. It feels like a suggestion from a trusted friend. I remember buying a book once, just because a vlogger I admire recommended it with genuine passion. That's the power of personal connection, something traditional ads could never fully achieve. Brands quickly realized this, and from there, influencer marketing became an essential part of their strategy, turning individuals from ordinary users into powerful communication channels in their own right. And then came another magical phenomenon: viral marketing. When consumers become the distribution channel. Have you ever wondered why a video of a dancing cat, a funny challenge, or a touching story can spread at lightning speed, being shared millions of times in just a few hours? That is the power of viral marketing. What's special here is this: brands don't have to pay for every one of those shares. We, the users, voluntarily become content shippers, free distribution channels. When a piece of content is compelling enough, unique enough, funny enough, or emotionally powerful enough, it grows legs and wings on its own. It doesn't just get shared on Facebook, it jumps to Zalo, TikTok, email, and even into everyday conversations. Smart brands learned how to create content that doesn't just push products directly, but also delivers entertainment information or emotion so that people want to share it. From meaningful campaigns to clever jokes, viral marketing has proven that consumers aren't just passive recipients. They're the most powerful media force of all, capable of amplifying a message far beyond any ad budget. Of course, everything has two sides, and the power of the crowd is no exception. The social media revolution has empowered consumers, turning them into sharp critics who are always ready to speak up. This brings us to the final point of this chapter: media crises and the power of the crowd. In the age of social media, a single complaint about product quality, a bad service experience, or even an offhand, poorly thought-out statement by a brand representative can ignite into a firestorm, spreading like wildfire in minutes. There's nowhere to hide. Praise can bring glory, but criticism can crash a brand in an instant. You probably remember cases where brands were boycotted over an ad campaign deemed insensitive, right? Or restaurants being dragged online for mistreating customers. The power of the social media crowd cannot be underestimated. It forces brands to be more transparent, to listen more closely, and to be more accountable than ever before. A slow response or a half-hearted apology can turn a small issue into a full-blown PR disaster on a national or even global scale. We've gone from being people who were simply told what to hear to people who have a voice. We don't just buy products anymore. We help shape brands, create trends, and even force companies to change. The social media revolution isn't just a technological shift. It's a shift in power. Consumers now have a seat at the table as essential partners in the conversation. So next time you scroll your news feed, watch an Instagram story, or share a funny video, remember, you're not just a user. You are part of this revolution, a participant, a critic, and sometimes the single most powerful media channel of all. I hope this Chapter 8 has given you a fresh perspective on our role in the modern advertising world. The game has changed, and we are now the key players. In the next chapter, we'll dig deeper into the latest trends and technologies shaping the future of advertising. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. Thank you for listening, and see you in Chapter 9. Welcome back, everyone, to this series exploring the history of advertising, where we've journeyed from primitive messages carved on ancient papyrus through the flashy signboards of the 19th century, all the way to the artistic TV commercials of the 20th. We've witnessed advertising evolve, adapt, and sometimes even shape human culture itself. But if the previous chapters were about advertising trying to understand you, then this chapter, the 9th, tells the story of an era where advertising actually knows what you want. Maybe even better than you do. This is Chapter 9, the data era, when advertising knows what you want. Have you ever wondered why, right after you search for a pair of sneakers online, suddenly every website you visit and every app you open starts showing sneaker ads? Or why right after you mention a vacation spot to a friend, travel packages to that exact destination start appearing all over your Facebook feed? That's not coincidence, my friends. That's the rise and explosion of the big data era and programmatic advertising. 1. Big data and how brands follow you around the internet. Think about everything you do daily in the digital world. You scroll Facebook, watch YouTube videos, read the news shop on e-commerce sites, use GPS apps to find directions, even message friends. Every action, every click, every pause, every piece of content you linger on leaves behind a digital footprint. And when all those footprints are stitched together, they form a massive portrait of who you are, what you like, what you want, where you are, how much you can afford, and sometimes even what mood you're in. Brands don't have to guess anymore. They collect data from everywhere: your browsing history through cookies, your shopping habits, your social media interactions, your phone's location data, and even the information you willingly provide when you sign up for something. All these tiny pieces get fed into big data systems, and from there, a detailed profile of you is constructed. Fascinating, right? Maybe a bit creepy. But it's real. 2. Micro-level personalization. Ads created just for you. And with that mountain of data, advertising no longer needs to blast generic messages everywhere, hoping to hit the right audience. We're talking micro-personalization now. Ads created and delivered just for you. Imagine this. You're a young mom living in a big city with a comfortable income, passionate about organic products for your kids, and you love weekend trips. The system recognizes all of this, and the moment you browse the web, you won't see ads for pickup trucks or generic insurance plans. Instead, you'll see organic baby formula discounted family vacation flights, eco-friendly kids clothing. Even for the same product, what you see might differ. Your ad might show a young, energetic mother, while another consumer with a different age group or aesthetic might see a more mature model that matches their demographic. This level of personalization can get so intense that sometimes it feels like ads are reading your mind. And it's not only based on what you searched for, it's based on patterns and predictions you don't even realize you're showing. 3. The privacy debate, GDPR, and the future of cookies. But of course, the flip side of convenience and effectiveness is a heated debate about privacy. When our personal data becomes the oil of the 21st century, the questions are, who owns that data and how much control do we have over it? These concerns led to the creation of revolutionary legal frameworks, most notably the General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR), introduced by the European Union in 2018. GDPR completely changed how companies gather, process, and store personal data. It gives individuals the right to know how their data is being used, to request corrections, or even demand deletion. Those pop-ups saying we use cookies to improve your experience, yes, that's one of the direct consequences of GDPR. And speaking of cookies, they've been the main tool for tracking online behavior for decades. But under privacy pressure, and especially with Google Chrome leading the shift, third-party cookies are nearing extinction. Major browsers are phasing them out, forcing the advertising industry to search for new, less invasive, yet still effective solutions. We're seeing experiments with technologies like Google's FLOC federated learning of cohorts and various cookie-free identity systems. It's a challenging phase, but also one full of opportunities to build a future of advertising that balances effectiveness with ethics. 4. Artificial intelligence AI in ad creation and optimization. And then we have the force reshaping not just advertising, but the world itself, artificial intelligence. AI doesn't just analyze big data to identify potential customers. It's now part of the creative and optimization process too. Think about it, AI algorithms can analyze thousands, even millions of past ad campaigns, identifying which headlines, which content, which images, and which colors work best for a specific audience. AI can generate countless ad variations in seconds, test them on small groups, and then automatically optimize the campaign to show only the most effective version. No more marketing teams spending weeks running A/B tests, and AI can do it in minutes with incredible speed and accuracy. And with generative AI models like GPT-3, GPT-4, or tools like DALL-E AI can now write ad copy, generate images, or even create video scripts entirely on its own. This not only cuts costs and saves time, it makes hyper-personalized advertising possible at a level we've never seen before. Imagine each person receiving a completely unique ad message crafted by AI, using a tone, style, and image tailored to their interests, habits, and even their current emotional state. To me, this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's amazingly convenient. We see fewer irrelevant ads, and brands can reach the right people at the right moment. But on the other hand, it raises deep questions about personal autonomy and hidden influence. Do we really want something? Or is it just what an algorithm wants us to want? Are we stuck inside a filter bubble, only seeing what the system believes we want to see, missing out on broader perspectives? The data era has turned advertising from an art-driven industry into one deeply rooted in science and technology. It changed the game forever. And as we move forward, it's critical for individuals, lawmakers, and brands to work together to harness the power of data responsibly, making sure convenience doesn't come at the cost of privacy and personal freedom. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the next chapter where we explore the latest trends and predict the future of advertising in a world that never stops evolving. See you soon. Welcome to Chapter 10, The Future of Advertising. A turn toward humanity in our journey through the tumultuous history of advertising. We've traveled together across thousands of years, from clumsy scribbles on ancient papyrus, through the gaudy signboards of the 19th century, to the highly artistic TV campaigns of the 20th century. We've watched advertising constantly change, adapt to each era, each culture. And now, as the door of this history book begins to close, we stand before a bigger question than ever. What will the future of advertising look like? When we look at the current big picture, we can't deny a simple reality. The world is oversaturated with information. Phone screens, computers, TVs are blazing with billions of messages every single day. From the white noise of social media to the endless stream of pop-up ads, our minds seem to have become numb, if not downright exhausted. This leads to a paradox. While technology connects us more than ever before, people are increasingly craving genuine, deep, meaningful connection. And it is in that very context that advertising, if it wants to continue to exist and grow, has no choice but to evolve. Evolve not just in terms of technology or more complex algorithms, but in terms of philosophy and how it approaches and interacts with people. It has to turn toward the human. 1. The de-influencing trend and the return of authenticity. In recent years, a new term has appeared and quickly become a phenomenon: de-influencing. Sounds strange, doesn't it? If influencing is when KOLs or KOCs introduce and encourage you to buy a certain product, then de-influencing is when they publicly tell you not to buy a specific product or even an entire category of products. This doesn't mean they're against consumption altogether. More often, it's a response to overhype, to empty promises, or simply to point out that not every hot trend is really worth your money. For example, a beauty blogger might post a video saying, "You guys, this serum is going super viral right now. But honestly, I've tried it, and it's no different from way cheaper products. Don't waste your money." So why has this trend taken off so strongly? The answer lies in consumer fatigue. We've seen too many images so perfect they feel fake, too many flowery ads that say nothing, too many products put on a pedestal only to disappoint us when we try them ourselves. The influencing wave created a deep sense of skepticism. Today's consumers are smarter, more suspicious, and they crave authenticity. They want real reviews from real people they feel they can trust. This is the moment authenticity returns to the throne. Advertising in the future will have no room for fakery. Brands will need to be more transparent about their products and services. Instead of chasing short-lived hot trends with flashy but shallow ambassadors, they'll need to seek out honest voices, people who can share genuine experiences, even if they're imperfect, but therefore more believable. Simplicity, honesty, and sometimes even vulnerability become the strongest bridges between brands and customers. A truthful review that mentions a few flaws can be 100 times more convincing than a perfectly crafted script that lacks a soul. Because ultimately, people are looking for people. 2. Advertising in virtual worlds, metaverse, VR, AR. If authenticity is the soul, then technology is the body that will carry advertising into new dimensions. We've talked a lot about the metaverse, about virtual reality VR, and augmented reality AR. It sounds distant like science fiction, but we're standing right at the threshold of these changes. Imagine you're walking around a virtual city where you can meet friends, work, and have fun. There are no more annoying pop-up banner ads, like on the web. Instead, advertising is seamlessly woven into your experience. For example, you're in a virtual clothing store trying on outfits for your avatar. That virtual space might be sponsored by a major fashion brand, showcasing its latest collections in a vivid, immersive way. You can spin the garments 360 degrees, maybe even feel the fabric through VR haptic feedback. Or you might attend a virtual concert with thousands of others, and on stage the DJ could be wearing a limited edition pair of sneakers you can click on and buy instantly, either delivered physically to your doorstep in the real world or added as a digital item in your virtual wardrobe. Advertising in virtual worlds will focus on experience and interaction. It's no longer buy this product, but come experience this product. You might test drive a virtual car on a hyper-realistic virtual road before deciding to buy it in real life. You might join a VR cooking class sponsored by a seasoning brand, with the ingredients used in the class suggested for purchase. The challenge, however, is how to keep advertising from becoming intrusive in a space where users crave freedom and immersion. Personalization will have to reach a much higher, more refined level, where ads feel like helpful additions, like services, rather than interruptions. Brands will need a deep understanding of user behavior and preferences in virtual environments to create ad experiences that are truly valuable and welcome. And above all, they'll need to carefully consider privacy, the line between reality and virtuality, and the boundary between advertising and personal experience. 3. The rise of value-based advertising, sustainability, diversity, inclusion. In the 21st century, especially with the rise of Gen Z and millennials, consumers don't just buy products, they buy values. They don't just care about quality or price. They want to know what the brand stands for, how it treats its employees, and most importantly, how responsible it is towards society and the environment. Advertising in the future will have to reflect these core values. It can't just pay lip service to being green or socially responsible. Today's consumers are sharp. They can easily spot greenwashing PR stunts painted green or token gestures toward diversity and inclusion that are only surface deep. The brands that succeed will be the ones that truly live the values they promote. Their ads will tell stories about concrete actions, a fashion label being transparent about its supply chain, ensuring fair labor conditions, and using recycled materials. A cosmetics company that pledges not to test on animals and supports community projects. A tech giant that actively pushes for gender and racial diversity in its workforce and its products. These ads won't just be sales pitches, they'll be declarations of mission and vision. They'll touch consumers on a deeper level, creating bonds not only through products, but through shared ideals. When a brand reflects the values you believe in, you don't just become a customer. You become part of a community, a loyal advocate. Diversity and inclusion don't end with showing different faces in an ad. They also mean ensuring that the messaging isn't biased, doesn't exclude anyone, and genuinely celebrates difference. Value-based advertising is an invitation for consumers to join a larger journey, a higher purpose to help build a better world together. 4. The future is connection, not interruption. Advertising as a service and experience. This is probably the key point at the underlying philosophy of advertising's future. Think of the ads that annoy you most, and they're the ones that interrupt you. A YouTube video gets cut off mid-sentence. A great article is buried under a pop-up. The future of advertising has to move in the opposite direction. It has to transform from interruption into service, from sales message into valuable experience. Think of advertising as a close friend, someone who understands what you need, what you want, and shows up at the right time, in the right way, to help you rather than a stranger who barges in and yells in your ear. Advertising as a service, instead of just pitching ads, can become helpful tools. For example, a food brand might not only promote its products, but also create creative recipe content, nutrition tips, or even a free meal planning app. When you need dinner ideas, you'll naturally come to them, and their products will appear as part of the solution. Advertising as an experience. It's not just images or sounds. It becomes a space for you to interact and explore. Like the virtual worlds we mentioned above, or a mobile game sponsored by a brand where you can discover its story in a fun, engaging way. Or an online event, educational or entertaining, hosted by a brand that brings real value to participants. True personalized advertising. Not the same ad shown to everyone, but messages genuinely tailored to each individual's interests, needs, and behavior. This requires the intelligence of AI and big data, but with the ultimate goal of making ads useful, relevant, and non-intrusive. The goal is no longer to force a sale at any cost, but to build long-term relationships based on trust and value. When advertising becomes a helpful part of life, a meaningful story, a problem-solving tool, an experience worth remembering, that's when it truly shows its power. So we've looked together toward the future of advertising, a future that's no longer a race of noise and showmanship, but a marathon of sincerity, connection, and humanity. From the return of authenticity in the age of de-influencing, to immersive ad experiences in virtual worlds, to the rise of sustainability, diversity, and inclusion, all signs point in the same direction. The advertising of the future must be a bridge, not a wall. It must listen more than it talks, understand more than it judges, and serve more than it demands. Advertising at its best will become purposeful storytelling, a useful service, an experience that enriches life. It will return to its core essence, connecting people with what they need, what they want, and what they believe in, but in a more subtle, meaningful, and profoundly human way. And we, as informed consumers, have an important role in shaping that future. By supporting brands that are transparent, responsible, and genuinely value-driven, we're voting for the kind of advertising future we want to see, one where ads don't just sell products, but build trust, nurture values, and make the world just a little bit better. Thank you for journeying with me through this chapter. So we've traveled together on a long journey, exploring the mesmerizing world of advertising history, from the oldest ancient signboards to million-dollar campaigns in the digital age. I believe that by now, you have a clear overview of how these messages shape our society and our behavior, sometimes in very subtle ways, sometimes in very direct ones. But how do we make sure this knowledge doesn't just stay as empty theory? How do we turn you into a truly smart consumer? Someone who can read between the lines and understand the world of advertising that surrounds you every day. I have a small challenge for you, a 7-day action plan that will transform you from a passive ad viewer into a sharp, insightful analyst with a completely fresh perspective. Get ready. This will be a fun, eye-opening journey, and I bet you'll never look at advertising the same way again. Welcome to our 7-day action plan. This isn't some heavy assignment. Think of it as a mini adventure where you'll train your cognitive muscles about advertising. Treat it like a game where you're the detective and the world around you is a treasure chest full of clues. Day 1 and 2. The data collecting detective. Record every ad you see. Let's start with something simple. Become an extremely attentive observer. In these first 2 days, your task is to record every ad you see, hear, or interact with. Don't limit yourself. Keep your senses wide open. On TV, when you're watching a movie, a TV show, or even the news, how do the ads pop in between? On social media, when you scroll through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, where are the ads placed? What do they look like? On the street, billboards, bus stop, posters, taxi decals, even flyers handed directly to you. On radio podcasts, do you hear those short but convincing ad spots? In apps, websites, banners, pop-ups, ads embedded right into the content. And even unexpected places, product packaging, logo-printed t-shirts, coffee shop coasters. Illustration, a notebook or phone notes app with entries labeled Day 1, Ad 1, Medium TV message, fresh, fragrant soap, emotion refreshing. Narrator. As you record them, try to categorize them. Use a small notebook or a notes app on your phone. For each ad, jot down, medium, where did it appear, TV, Instagram, billboard, etc. Brand, just product. What are they advertising? Core message. What do they want you to do? Buy X, try Y, believe in Z. What are they trying to convey? Initial emotion. How did it make you feel instantly excited, annoyed, curious, indifferent? You'll be surprised by how many ads you've been ignoring every day. And once you start actively paying attention, the world around you will show up under an entirely new lens. Just like I once did. You'll start noticing patterns, strategies you never realized were there. Day 3 and 4. The Emotion Analyst. Dive deep into your favorite and least favorite ads. After collecting a mini treasure trove of ads in the first 2 days, now it's time for you to become an analyst. Over the next 2 days, pick one ad you genuinely love, one ad you truly dislike or even hate. Don't just say I like it or I hate it. Dig deeper into why. Ask yourself, for the ad you love, what emotions does it evoke? Joy, desire, empathy, admiration, curiosity. Why does it make you feel that way? Beautiful visuals, catchy music, a meaningful story, or a message that hits your heart. What is its message? Does it make you want to buy the product? Or do you just love the idea it conveys? What makes it different from other ads? For the ad you hate, what emotions does it trigger? Annoyance, anger, disappointment, or boredom? What specifically irritates you? Repetition, loud audio, unclear messaging, or does it feel fake, inauthentic? What is it trying to persuade you of? and why does it fail? If you were the creator, what would you change to make it better? Emotional analysis is the key to understanding the power of advertising. As we've seen throughout history, the most successful ads are those that tap into deep human emotions. Write down your thoughts. You'll start spotting techniques that advertisers use to manipulate or inspire us. Honestly, it's an art. Day 5 and 6. The History Explorer. Discover the story behind a brand and its iconic campaign. Now we'll connect the ads you see every day with the history we studied. Over these 2 days, choose 1. A long-established brand. Coca-Cola, Nike, Apple, a car maker. 2. One of its iconic advertising campaigns. Go online and explore the story behind that brand. How did they start? What were their original values and vision? Which iconic ad campaign made them famous? Apple's Think Different, Nike's Just Do It. Coca-Cola's I'd like to buy the world a Coke. How has their messaging evolved over time? Does it still hold on to the original values? Or has it adapted? How did their ads reflect the culture and society of their era? This will help you realize that advertising isn't just a temporary message, it's part of history tied to the rise of brands and even entire societies. You'll notice old techniques still used today or timeless ideas that shaped how we see the world. Personally, I find this the most fascinating part because it shows that advertising isn't just selling, it's storytelling, it's cultural building. Day 7. The Wise Ambassador, Share and Discuss. After 6 days of apprenticeship in the world of advertising, it's time to share your insights. Your Day 7 task. 1. Pick a friend or family member. 2. Share what you learned over the past 6 days. Tell them about the ads you documented, the ones you loved, hated, and why, or the brand story you researched. 3. Discuss a recent ad campaign that both of you know. Was the campaign effective? What emotions did it evoke? What made it stand out, or was it just boring? Does it reflect a social trend? Sharing and discussing doesn't just help you reinforce your knowledge. It opens you up to perspectives you may not have considered. Everyone reacts to ads differently, and by listening, you'll gain a deeper understanding of how these messages influence people across backgrounds. This will help you become a wise ambassador, spreading advertising awareness to those around you. And that's our 7-day action plan. I believe that after these 7 days, you won't passively consume ads anymore. You'll be a smarter consumer, a sharper analyst, and someone who can decode the messages around you with awareness. You'll see that advertising isn't just noise. It's a language, an art form, and a mirror reflecting our society. Challenge yourself and start today. Don't forget to share your experience in the comments. I'm excited to hear about your discoveries. Thank you for joining me on this journey. See you in the next videos. We've had a fascinating journey together, weaving through every corner of history, from hieroglyphic carvings on stone, the cries of ancient street vendors, all the way to complex digital campaigns and unbelievable viral ads on today's social platforms. Through J.B. Price's book, A History of Advertising from the Earliest Times, we've not only seen the evolution of an industry, but also a wide-angle view of how human society itself has changed. And now, before we close out this video, I want us to pause and look back to distill 3 core ideas, 3 messages I truly want you to carry with you after our conversation today. These aren't just lessons from the book. They're also my personal reflections, distilled from years of observing and thinking about this message-saturated world. Let's walk through these 3 key points together. 1. Advertising is a mirror reflecting history, culture, and the deepest desires of human society. The first key idea I want you to take with you, and the one I find the most profound, is this: advertising is not just about selling a product or a service. It is a mirror honestly reflecting the history, culture, and the deepest desires, and sometimes the most hidden fears of human society in every era. When we look at ads from hundreds, even thousands of years ago, we're not just seeing things for sale. We're seeing the values a culture held dear, the bravery of Roman gladiators, the prosperity of Persian merchants, the graceful beauty of ancient Egyptian women. Moving into more modern times, those ads about the American dream with the suburban house, the shiny car, and the happy family after World War II clearly show us the longing for stability, abundance, and an ideal life that an entire generation dreamed of. Then came the 1960s, when the counterculture movement exploded and advertising shifted along with it. Instead of obsessing over perfection, ads started celebrating individuality, freedom, and sometimes outright rebellion. Car ads didn't just talk about speed anymore. They talked about adventure and breaking free. Fashion ads weren't just about looking good. They were about self-expression. Advertising became like a silent chronicle telling the story of what we believed, what we longed for, and how we saw ourselves in the world. Even today, when ads are more personalized and diverse than ever, we still see them reflecting contemporary social issues, sustainability, diversity and inclusion, mental health. These aren't just marketing trends. They're echoes of real concerns, struggles, and hopes that are shaping our society right now. This makes me realize that to truly understand an era, sometimes all you have to do is look at what people are advertising and how they advertise. It's like a living museum of collective dreams and fears. 2. Technology changes the medium, but human psychology and the need for connection remain the core of effective advertising. Moving on to the second point, something I find both fascinating and enduring. No matter how fast technology changes the way messages are delivered, from rough carvings on stone to AI personalized content, the core of effective advertising is still human psychology and our deep need to connect, to belong, and to be seen. Think about it. Thousands of years ago, a seller in a Babylonian marketplace might have pitched his goods with spoken words, trying to grab attention by telling an intriguing story about where the product came from or promising some benefit it would bring. Even without speakers or LED screens, the goal was the same: spark curiosity, build trust, and appeal to the desire for a better life. Then came the age of print. With newspapers and posters, advertising went visual and textual. People used images and headlines to evoke emotion, build brand image, and establish credibility. Whether it was a too-good-to-be-true miracle cure or a glamorous fashion, the target was always the same: deep layers of human psychology. The longing for health, beauty, status, safety, or love. Later, radio and television exploded onto the scene, bringing sound-moving images and full narratives into people's homes. The power of advertising multiplied, as it could now tell vivid stories and create stronger emotional impact. A catchy jingle, a happy family image, a beloved celebrity using a product. All of that was designed to create connection, familiarity, and trust. And now, in the digital age, we have the internet, social media, machine learning algorithms. Ads aren't just on big screens, they're literally in our pockets. But has the nature of advertising changed? Not really. Whether it's a short TikTok clip aiming to go viral, a sponsored Instagram post, or a personalized banner on a website, they're all still trying to capture attention, create relevance, trigger a sense of wanting to join, to own, to be part of something bigger. Technology is the outfit, the ever-changing outer layer. Human psychology, with its fundamental needs for safety, love, belonging, respect, and self-expression, is the body underneath. It is the eternal engine behind every effective ad campaign. Understanding this helps us see through the shiny surface of tech to the human heartbeat underneath. 3. Understanding advertising makes us not only smarter consumers, but also more conscious citizens. And finally, the third point, and perhaps the most practical and personal one for each of us. Understanding the history and mechanics of advertising doesn't just help us become smarter consumers who make more conscious buying decisions. More importantly, it equips us to become more clear-headed citizens, people who can analyze and evaluate information independently in a world increasingly saturated with messages. Honestly, I used to see ads as nothing more than annoying interruptions, videos to skip, flyers to throw away. But when you begin to read them the way you'd read a historical text or a psychology book, something magical happens. You start noticing persuasive techniques, subtle psychological strategies woven into them. You start asking, what are they trying to sell me? And more importantly, what story are they trying to sell me? Once you realize that an ad isn't just about the product, but about constructing an image, a value, a feeling, you become less likely to be swept away by hollow promises. You recognize that not everything that glitters is gold, and not every message is truthful. You start spotting techniques like artificial scarcity, social proof, everyone uses it, fear of missing out, FOMO, or simply the use of celebrities to manufacture trust. And this doesn't stop at shopping decisions. This ability to analyze messages extends to every part of life. In an age where information and misinformation spreads at lightning speed, being able to read the intent behind each message, whether it's a news story, a social media post, or a political statement, is a survival skill. Advertising at its core is a form of persuasion, and when you understand how persuasion works, you're less likely to be manipulated or dragged along by biased narratives. We're not just consumers of products, we're consumers of information. Training critical thinking and the ability to question the source, purpose, and agenda behind every message we receive is essential if we want to be responsible citizens who can contribute to a more conscious, transparent society. It gives us the power to choose not just the products we buy, but the values and beliefs we decide to live by. So we've just summed up 3 main takeaways from our journey through the history of advertising. I truly hope that with these 3 points, you'll see the world around you a little differently. Not to become cynical in a negative way, but to become more awake, to better understand the invisible forces shaping our thoughts and behaviors every day. Advertising, in the end, is an inseparable part of modern life. Instead of avoiding it or ignoring it, let's learn to read it, to understand it. Because when we do, we're not just uncovering the history of products, we're uncovering the history of ourselves, of our desires, and of humanity as a whole. And that wraps up our journey back through time with a history of advertising from the earliest times. Honestly, after reading this book and really sitting with it, I realized something advertising isn't just clever lines or eye-catching images. It's a cultural mirror, a measure of how society changes, and sometimes it's even the invisible thread that shapes an entire generation. You know, every time I prepare a video like this, I always ask myself, what is it that truly ties us together? What creates those unforgettable impressions in the collective memory of an era? For me, growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, I remember vividly the ad campaigns that didn't just sell products, they sold dreams, lifestyles. Think of those Pepsi or Coca-Cola TVCs packed with iconic music stars, the scooter commercials showing someone riding through the city with this sense of freedom and ease, or those animated ads for candy and snacks. Those weren't just ads. They were part of our childhood. They were the threads that shaped the me of an entire generation, giving us shared stories to look back on. And that's exactly what I'm most curious about when it comes to you, the ones who've been on this journey with me. After traveling together through thousands of years of advertising, from ancient signage in Pompeii all the way to million-dollar campaigns of the 21st century, I want to hear your story. I want to hear your... So the question I want to ask you today is, which ad campaign do you think truly defined your generation? Was it a slogan that's permanently engraved in your mind, a jingle you still hum to this day? Or maybe an iconic image that the moment you see it brings back a flood of childhood or teenage memories? Share your story, your personal memories of advertising in the comments below. I'm genuinely excited to read and respond to the unique perspectives and vivid memories you bring. Because more than anything, it's these personal stories that form the golden threads that weave together the colorful cultural tapestry we're exploring. Don't hesitate to dig a little deeper. Tell me why that campaign was special for you, how it influenced your thinking, shaped the way you saw the world, or even affected your lifestyle choices. I believe that through these shared reflections, we'll not only understand advertising better, we'll understand ourselves and each other a whole lot more. If you feel that this journey back through history, this exciting, inspiring exploration, has given you fresh perspectives, helped you connect the dots, and see more clearly how our world operates through the lens of messages that seem simple, but actually hold an entire cultural universe behind them, then don't hesitate to give this video a like. That tiny like from you is a huge motivation for me. It's a signal that this content matters, that it resonates with you. And more importantly, share it with your friends, your co-workers, or anyone you think is just as hungry to explore. To dive deeper into the cultural, social, and human stories behind every billboard and every commercial clip out there. Let's spread this curiosity together, this passion for understanding the world around us. And finally, to make sure you don't miss any of our upcoming journeys, whether about advertising history, or the countless cultural, social, scientific, and artistic dimensions we'll explore, reflect on, and decode together. Hit subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll be among the first to know every time I post a new video, a new story. Let's build a community of people who love learning, who ask questions, seek answers, and constantly expand their worldview. Because each video isn't just a lesson, it's a conversation, a chance for us to grow in awareness together. Thank you for joining me in this video, for taking the time to listen and reflect with me. I'll see you in our next adventures where we'll open another door and step into yet another fascinating world of knowledge. Goodbye for now, and see you next time.